Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Tuesday Raising Kingdom Kids. I am Jenny Thomas, and I'm so excited to be with you today. I am a mama of four littles. I have twin boys and two little girls, and each one of my kids have such sweet spirits, gifting, and needs. And as I'm sure all of your kids do too. I have found alongside my husband, as we've been raising my children, we've overcome many obstacles, but also got to celebrate many joys. However, as we have been raising our kids, we've needed a community of friends and family to come together with us, to pray with us, come alongside, celebrate the joys, and also to guide us as we hit different milestones in their development. So today, I want to come alongside you guys and talk about how we raise our kids together in the world that we live in. Because it's time that we come together as a community to support and pray for one another. Because parenting isn't always easy, let me be honest. Each week I get an opportunity just to share our journey as we're raising Kingdom Kids here in Texas. And then we get an opportunity of having a time of mentorship and community. So, today, thank you all for joining me as we journey through raising our kids together and how we build godly character. But before I share some of our journey, I would love it if you haven't before, go ahead and hop on. I'm putting it in the chat right now. We have a webinar where I would love for you guys um, to hop on if you haven't signed up already on the webinar, and then it'll send you a Zoom link and we can talk as a group, as a community, after I share a little story on our journey as together, as community, as partners, as we raise our kids. So if you haven't already, go ahead and fill that out. If you have, you should be getting the Zoom link already. So today, let's talk about, okay, how do we build godly character in our children? For me as a mom, I want my kids to have that godly character, but sometimes it's tough. Sometimes the outside exposure and environment really changes and molds them. So, how do I develop that? How do I put that building blocks into place so that they have that firm foundation? So they know who they are in God and they display those godly characteristics no matter what the environment is, no matter what the outcomes are. Well, we all know that God says that we are to teach them in the way they are to go, but what does that mean? How do we do that as parents? Well, for me, it starts off by defining the characteristics that I wanted to install in our kids, the godly characteristics. So I would love to hear from you guys. What are those godly characteristics? Put them in the chat that you want of your kiddos. What do you want them to develop? What do you want them to display? Who do you want them to be? Because it's important to define that as a family, as a mom and dad, or if you're a single parent, as that parent. So then you can start working on those steps and put it with Bible verses of what you want them to have and develop. From us here in our family, we sat down and said, okay, what are our top ones we want to work on right now in this season? Because we want to develop a positive, stable characteristic trait, but we want it to flow from spiritual growth too. Because we can train our kids to be good kids, but that can be relatively meaningless as they start getting exposed to things in the world and they don't have that personal relationship with God and no real understanding of what He wants us to do, what is right and wrong, or what is just. And kids can have this where, okay, I go to church, but if we don't have this building blocks, this foundation, then when they go off to college, they go off to play at a friend's house, then that spiritual maturity and character traits aren't installed deep enough that then they tend to go with the worldly views instead of what's really right and what we really want for them. So as we are starting to build this, we want to build them through a spiritual flow, through God. So what are those character traits that we should be aiming to develop and encourage as parents? But we as parents have to set that example and use teachable moments to do them, to install this in our kids. So for me, the first one for us is to honor. Right now, Clay and I are really working hard to teach our kids to honor everybody, honor our bullies, honor our teachers, the elderly, honor each other, respect each other, see them as God sees them, develop integrity. Integrity, that quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. Honesty is huge for us, which I feel like we've done a really good job. As our kids have shown different times where they were just very honest with us. It's not always rewarding in the culture that we live in, but it's a virtue that they really need to have. And without it, all of your children's most important relationships will be compromised. So teach them that honesty from the beginning. Courage. Courage to stand up for what's right, even in the middle of peer pressure, even if they're the only one, to stand up for what's right. Honesty. My son saw his Christmas present. The UPS man, and I think I shared this, was, bringing his Christmas present. And he asked him, "Hey, is that a Red Ryder BB gun?" And the UPS man stopped and looked at it and said, "Sure is." And he watched him as he delivered. But you know what? He was very honest. And he said, "Hey, Mom, can we chat? By the way, I saw that the delivery guy put it at our doorstep." And I asked him, "Do I still get it?" But that honesty, even when he saw it, and he didn't have to tell us that he saw it. We didn't know for sure that he saw it or knew that it was for him. The courage to say no. In our school, we have our kids in a Christian school, but then they get to see movies, they get to see Disney shows that we aren't okay with. My boys, they talked to their teacher and said, "Hey," they had the courage to say, "Hey, we're not allowed to watch this. Can we read our book instead? And also, can I turn my desk so we don't see it? Because it would be very easy for me to look up and stare at the screen and listen and everything. So can I just turn my desk too?" Determination. Determination to equip them to know that they can do anything that they set their mind to stick through it to the end, even in the hardships. Kindness. We have so many bullies in the world. We need some kindness. Loyalty and dependability. That is so big of a virtue that they need, that commitment. Purity, as they get old, purity, to reserve the sexual activity until they're in marriage, because they need to understand that consequences that happens if you don't. The pain, the heartbrokenness, humility to say, "Hey, you know what? I messed up here." Love, love like no other. How to love not only their friends and neighbors, but also their enemies. Respect. Respect is huge for us. And we talk about a lot of, we need to respect each other. We need to respect people's property, respect our community, authority. It's that honoring each other too. That true, you know, respect in our speech, our behavior, our attitudes, everything. Self-discipline. You'll hear me tell my kids when sometimes they're a little bit out of control, that hey, discernment. Is this really how we should be acting? Let's have some discernment here. By having self-discipline and self-respect, it also teaches us how to honor ourselves physically, emotionally, financially. And that's not only pleasing to God, but it also helps us for life in our health, in our financial situations, and our burnout. So, think about those. What are yours that you want to work on? And there's a lot. There's 10 million characteristics that I want to build, but it starts off with, okay, let's build one at a time. Where is it? What is the season? Building these characteristics in your kid is one of the best things that you can do to prepare them for life. We are so good at making sure that our kids have the right academics, and they're in music, and they're in sports. But we sometimes neglect this vital characteristics of training them and godly characteristics that they have. And it's one of the most important things. And it can also be one of the most difficult and demanding jobs as a parent. But as parents, it's our responsibility to work hard to build and help our children develop and grow in character, to grow to be the person they are. And you know what? Even though it can be a tough task or job, we were best equipped for it because we love them. We love them more than anybody else, and we know what is best for them. We should get excited about being able to raise them because of the next generation that will be influenced by it. And building children who have good, strong Christian characteristics, who stand out in the world and may be used for God. The other thing is how do we do that? So we can build this list of characteristics and list them all out, but how do we do that as parents? What do we need to do? So let me share that with you. How do we build these characteristics? Honestly, it's from us. It's from the example that we set as parents. We have to live by godly characteristics because they're watching us. They want to become like us. Even though sometimes they throw fits and aren't always the sweetest, most loving, they are watching us and they are trying to be just like us. So we can't expect our kids to be honest if we're not honest. If we're always losing control, getting angry, getting frustrated, we can't expect them to have self-control. Because are we modeling it? Are we showing it? No. If we aren't diligent at our work, how can we expect them to be diligent? If we don't follow through with our promises, how can we expect them to follow through with their promises? So we have to mold it. I mean, the hard truth is the kids become what we are and what we show them. We can teach them, and that is one of the characteristics which we'll go through. But what we do influences them even more. So we have to think about that. And we're going to make mistakes. And you know what? That's a great thing because we're going to make mistakes. We can struggle. And then we could just show our children, you know what? Hey, I made a mistake here. Hey, I did this. I'm going to try to do better. This isn't what we should be doing and how we should be honoring God or the characteristic that I want to install or show you. And you know what? The kids will be encouraged to see that, we make mistakes, but we also get grace and we also give them grace as they're working through it and they're developing it. We're not meant to be perfect. However, God shows us how to be perfect. So if you're struggling going, yikes, I don't want my kids to be like me, or, oh my gosh, I'm not always the best role model. Ask the Holy Spirit, hey, come help me grow in self-control, obedience, accountability, honesty, gentleness, whatever it is, and He will. Allow Him to mold you and teach you so then you can be the moldable one, the teachable one that then shows it to your children. Because God wants us to be. He wants to mold us into His image. And so allowing us to be moldable, opening ourselves up to that is huge. And it's one of those things that if we aren't quite where we want to be, that's okay. God will change us as we open up and ask Him to. It's kind of like building that house. You can build it out of straw or you can build it out of strong wood and brick and have a solid foundation that protects us. And you know what? Then when boundaries are tested, you have hurricanes that come in, our house is standing firm. That's the same thing with kids. They're going to test, they're going to push. They're kids. They got to learn. But they need those firm walls and boundaries to help them feel safe and secure and know what's right, what's wrong, and what characteristics they should have. So number one, how we can build it is by living the example. Number two is by learning it through everyday life. Even when we aren't intentionally training them, teaching them the characteristics, they're being formed by the outside world. What are we allowing them to do or not to do? And that's really key. What are we allowing them to do or not to do? They're learning through everyday situation. So they're learning through school. They're learning when they're playing out with their friends. They're learning in how you react, your words, your activities. What are you doing? They're also being shaped when they're allowed to go places. What are they allowed to watch, to read, to listen to do? We are very cautious on what our kids can listen to or what they can watch on TV. And we've set that boundary at the beginning. I'm also very mindful of books. My kids love to read, but you have to understand the author always pushes their values in the books. So make sure that they're reading wholesome books. When they're outside playing, what are they hearing and seeing? It's one of those things, sometimes we get kind of distracted because we get busy with work, with life, with making supper at night, with getting ready for the next day, getting homework done, that we get distracted and we don't use these opportunities to build those godly characteristics. But we have to, because it's your job. It's your job, but not just a job, it's the opportunity to be able to guide, to teach, to supervise, and to train them. And that time is limited. So take everything as an opportunity and be joyful in it because it's worth it. You start planting those godly seeds now, it's amazing what will spring up in their character. And it's just those little seeds planted here and there and the next time. The other thing is they're influenced by the role models. What role models do they have? Do they have role models at church? If you aren't involved in a church, I encourage you, get involved. Find some role models that can come in. Find some role models in the teenage group that can talk to the children, that maybe can go play baseball with them or shoot basketball hoops with them. A role model that can teach them on Wednesday evenings. We have Wednesday evening church. Someone that can, encourage them, and also someone else that they can look up to and see, oh, how do they act? How did they handle this situation? What are they doing? Ooh, I want to be more like them. It gives them another opportunity, another outpour of, okay, this is how I should be versus this isn't. For us, the other one is our grandparents. We rely a lot on my parents. We call them up and talk to them about situations or ask them questions. And they really role model, and my kids look up to them. And in tough situations, they'll even want to call and talk to them. So set that up there so that they have some other way for when everything in the world is pouring into them, then they have someone else that can also pour into them that is a good role model that can show them the way, that can build those godly characteristics. The third is how we discipline them. When your child acts wrong or shows wrong behavior or has attitudes, trust me, my kids have lots of attitudes sometimes. Look at it as an opportunity to train them about what God says. Don't look at it as it's an interruption, it's causing chaos, it's doing this. It's an opportunity to train. Don't let those chances go. Step into it. If you have a very difficult child, then you know what? You are so, so blessed. And you're blessed even with more opportunities in a day to shape their characteristic with each opportunity to train or to discipline. It's a blessing. And you know what? You should spend more time training. And the more time you're spending training and using these teachable moments, then the less you'll have to discipline because they know right from wrong. And they'll start remembering and start using it and start applying everything. The other thing is set the expectation of what is allowed and what isn't. Just like at our jobs, they set the expectation. This is the time you have to be here. This is how long your shift is. This is what you're supposed to do. The same goes for the house. In my house, we set the expectation when they're going out to play, who they can play with, where they can ride their bikes, the boundaries of, okay, here's the streets you can ride your bikes on. You have to ask before you go. I have to know where you're at. Okay, this is what you can listen to. This is what you can watch. Here's how much TV time you can have. They need those boundaries because then they know the right behavior to apply. And when things are not right, if it's not how it should be, then they also know to come home. And they have that of, nope, this is the expectation. This is what I should do. And the last one is that they need to learn through actually planned, positive, good teaching, constructive teaching. This is key. This is very key. Don't just leave it behind to be like, oh, they learn it at church. Okay, we're playing some worship music here or there. Take dedicated time and pour into them. Show them in the Bible the negatives, the positives, the results of it. Let them learn. Let them learn from you. Give true life stories. My kids love to hear stories of when I was growing up. Hey, did you ever do this? Tell me about a time, Mom. And sharing those stories and letting them learn from you too, and seeing how, this was the consequence because I did this. And they will ask me, well, what different choice would you make? And we talk about it. One of them that they bring up all the time is, as a child, I loved gummy worms, and we would go out to the lake and there was a little convenience store and we could go get gummy worms. Well, my parents sent us with the money and said, okay, you guys can get one thing and you have to share it. So my brother and I were supposed to share gummy worms. And since we were at the lake and fishing and all of that, we went down to fish, and I got the brilliant idea that I would give him a regular worm. Let me just rinse it off in the water. Give him a regular worm and I'll eat the gummy worms, and he won't want any gummy worms. Sure enough, he spit it out. He hated it. And to this day, he hates gummy worms. Well, I got busted in doing it. And you know what? For the rest of the 2 weeks that we went out to the lake and everything, I didn't get any gummy worms. I didn't even get to go over to JJ's Marina and, get a snack because of what I did. I mean, you learn from it. They asked me if I would do it differently, and I was like, of course I would. Would I really want my brother to eat a worm? No, that's disgusting. That's yucky. So, they learn from it. Do they giggle and laugh about it? Yeah. And do they sometimes go, oh my gosh, we could do this or that to AA? Sure, they do. Do they ever? No, but it's one of those things that let them learn from you. Tell them about the times we weren't perfect, but also, what's the results? What would I do differently? The other thing I do is we do devotions. And as our devotions, I'm going to share some of them with you. For our kids, we will read the Jesus Story Bible. And it just goes through each story, and we talk about the stories and what we can learn from each of the stories. And, the other things we do is as I've gotten older, this is the current one we're doing, Over the Edge. And it gives us, and this is just where my boys are at. AA, we still go through more of the stories, but she listens as we do this. And it talks about a little bit of story of who we are. We memorize the Bible verse, we study the truth, and then you can read more. And that's then their opportunity. I let them read some more and I come back and discuss it with them. The other thing is this is my absolute favorite. If you have little kids, get this. Oops, hold on. Let me put it this side. Get this book, my ABC Bible verse, Reading God's Word with the Little Hearts. So it goes A through Z, and it is absolutely amazing. Like, for example, K, keep your tongue from evil. And it talks about what God wants us to do. And it tells a story about Missy. Missy is the big one. And as it goes through what she did wrong, what she learned from it, and then it has a talk. How can we keep our tongue from saying evil things? Sometimes we're not sure how to use our tongue with God's glory. What should we ask God to give us? And then it talks about saying this whole Bible verse over, and that has you memorize it. And then it goes through the other Bible verses of, okay, remember these verses, and then ask God a prayer for grace to keep my tongue from evil and for wisdom to know what you should say that will glorify him. We use this from when our kids were little, and still they will talk about this. Oh, remember this verse, remember that verse. But they're able to apply it in their current situation. So if you have young kids, let me do it on this side. Highly, highly recommend this. But any devotional works, and there is tons out there. These are just 3 that we use, so I'm just sharing them. But any of it works. So as parents, it's our responsibility. God gave us this responsibility to work hard at building and helping our children develop and grow in character. And how do we do it? We do it by leading by example. We do it by seeing what they're exposed to in everyday life and speaking truth to it. We do it through discipline. And we also do it through teaching. So this is just a little bit of our journey. I know it's not a bunch of stories and everything, but I'll be glad to share stories and how I've done it on the backside. So let's continue talking about this of how we can build these godly characteristics. So come and hop on Zoom with us. I'm going to put the link in the bottom of the chat again, but hop on and let's continue this conversation as we're building the community of parents that come together to raise children that are kingdom children. All right, guys, I will see you guys soon on the backside.